So, a friend was asking me the other day, what is the difference between a masculine man, a toxic man, and a divine masculine man? Right? So, these are the three classification of men. Like, these are the three energetic classification of men. And the reason why it's important for every lady to know this classification of men energetically is that it really helps to prune your discernment. It helps to prune your ability to discern the kind of men you should avoid and the kind of men to entertain, especially if you are in that season of you're dating, that single season where you are testing the waters, you're active in the dating pool, should I say. You're basically active, and you're single, ready to mingle phase. The reason why it's important for women to know this, it really helps your discernment. It really helps to save your time, save your energy, which is so precious. And this topic is so important because of the age that we live in. We live in an age of, mass woundedness. Mass woundedness. There are a lot of people that are wounded who have no desire to heal. They have no desire to heal. And imagine getting with these kind of people, right? Like, that is basically, you are about to get yourself wounded, not just you, but also the generation that you will birth as a result of your partnership with these kind of men. And this is not a video to demonize men. No, this is an objective observation, and I'm just here to share insight and wisdom, and hopefully this might inform a lady or two out there, regardless of the part of the world you're in. This is a knowledge that applies to every woman in every culture, in every geographical location in this current age, right? So why is it important to understand this classification? Well, in this video I will get to the definition of these three, an energetic classification of men, and why it's important to know this classification as a woman, in this particular season that I described earlier, and also how to navigate your relationship with these category of men as an intentional woman who really wants to create a healing relationship and a healed family and generation. So if you're a woman on that journey to create a life that is different, or a future or a family that is very different from the one you grew up from, or you grew from, right? You want to create something more healthy, more wholesome. You want a family that truly practices what love really is. You need to understand these knowledge, because this is not something that is taught. It is not something that is taught at homes and in church, in religious houses anymore. People don't teach this stuff, right? And this is it's what I would call the science of discernment. And these days women are not taught how to be discerning. But here's the beautiful thing: every woman is created with the gift, the potential. Like, most women have the potential of discernment in them. But just like a potential, it's like a dormant weapon. It cannot use itself. It only gets used when you have gained consciousness of that weapon and how to use that weapon. That is the only way to activate that power, that weapon, and it becomes power in your hand. So this is the science of discernment. And like I said, because it is not easily taught, it is not commonly taught to women these days, unlike how it was back in the days, like back in the medieval era, right? How it was taught to in certain cultures, like women were taught these things, like how to discern the right man for her, and how to even give signals to attract the man without being overt or obvious, right? So those knowledge are not being taught these days. That is why we see women whoring themselves, making themselves to be baby mamas, by men who haven't even proved themselves worthy of her womb and her feminine treasures, right? So this is a time to raise women that are aware of their feminine treasures, and they know how to gatekeep it, the right way, but also dispense it the right way when it's time, right? So that is the essence of this video. So without any further explanation, without any further ado, let us dive right into the meat of this video. So we're talking about three energetic categories of men, starting with the toxic men. The toxic men are the obvious, right? Like we all know a good example of a toxic masculine man, right? So the toxic masculine men, they have two extremes, like two sides of the extremes, and neither side of the extreme is healthy. It's still essentially toxic, right? So one side of the extreme is a toxic masculine man that is, more like a loud toxic masculine man. So these are the men who are mostly arrogant. These are the men who mostly come off as arrogant and as borderline misogynist, and they are the greatest upholders of toxic patriarchy, not patriarchy but toxic patriarchal culture. Like they are the greatest upholders of the toxic patriarchal culture. But then the other side of the toxic masculine men are also people who passively uphold the toxic patriarchal culture, unlike the other side, which actively uphold it. Now, I'm not going to drop names. I don't know if I should drop names. I think it would be messy, but I want you guys to understand that if at any point of this video I drop names of celebrities, it is not as a result of malice or hatred towards that celebrity. So if I'm dropping names, just know that is coming from more of a subjective point of view, because I don't know these people personally. So I cannot assume that my assessment of them is 100% accurate. But however, I am going to name them, or rather judge them, but not with the intent to judge or condemn, but I would judge them for the sake of understanding in this video based off of the persona that they have showed in public, like what they're publicly known for. But this is not to say that this is who they really are, because I don't live in their lives. None of us live in their lives, so we can never be 100% certain that this person is truly this way. So I just wanted to put that out there as a disclaimer, that the judgment or the name dropping is as a result of the persona that is being projected in public, and not as a result of who the person might be realistically. So when we talk about the toxic masculine men, the loud toxic masculine men, I think a good example of that was Andrew Tate. At least around the time when he first of all became like an internet sensation or something, like around the period where he just became popular, like that version of him that we know. I haven't been in touch with his content in a while, so I cannot boldly say that he's still that way till today, right? So but the former persona of Andrew Tate, when he first broke the internet, that was a toxic masculine man. That was a toxic masculine man. And that would be an example of a loud toxic masculine man, because he reeks of arrogance in a lot of the philosophies that he shared, a lot of the philosophies that he believed in at that time, right? So now let's talk about the other side, the other end of the spectrum of the toxic masculine man. And this is the side of the spectrum that is not very common. And these are the people that a lot of people are often very confused by, because like I said earlier, their role is more passive than active. So because they tend to assume that passive role, a lot of the time people tend to overlook them. And in fact, a lot of the time they mistake them as good men just because they are in the passive role. But like I said, energy does not lie. Energy does not lie. Energy is energy, and it reveals the truth. So these men are men who are very passive. Like they are the kind of men who would be in a society, for instance, they are the kind of men who exist in a society where a lot of injustice and unfairness is happening to a lesser group or a less privileged group within the society. These men, they will see these things happen. They will see this injustice. They are seeing this injustice. They are seeing this unfairness. They're seeing this mistreatment. They're seeing this evil around them every single day. But they do absolutely nothing about it. They do nothing about it for a prolonged period of time. It is not just a one-time step down. It is a continuous step down that they have been doing for years and for years and for years. So these are the kind of men who would notice a particular critical situation that needs to be addressed, that needs, a certain hand or a certain change to come. More often than not, they have the ability to enforce these changes, but for some reason, for some very real reason, they choose to do nothing. And the question is not that, they choose to do nothing, therefore they're evil. No, that is not what makes them evil. What makes them evil is why. Is the question why? Why do they see these things? They understand that it is evil, right? They even talk about it to their friends. They give this impression of they actually care, like they see these things happening. They talk about it in their friend group as people who care, but deep down, they know that they don't want to do anything about it. They know that they will not do anything about it, right? But they give an impression to the people around them that they actually see these things and they care. So that means they see these things and they understand that this is evil, this is unfair, this is injustice, but they do nothing. And the question is why? Why do they do nothing? They do nothing because they have fear. They are afraid. They have doubt. They have no trust in their masculinity. And they have no trust in their masculinity because they don't have, that divine knowledge and wisdom of what it means to actually be a man. They are not tapped into God. They're not divine masculine men. They don't believe in God. They're not godly men. They may appear that way to people. That's what's very dangerous about these individuals. They often appear the way that they are not, right? So this person has fear, this person has shame, and these are the kind of men who do nothing to help themselves to evolve from that fear, to evolve from that state of mind and that state of being, out of love to a version of themselves that is more powerful, that is knowledgeable, because they don't want to be brave. They don't want to be brave because they don't have love in their hearts. Love cannot stay where fear lives, guys. So these kind of men may appear as good men, but in truth, they have no love in their hearts, because love will charge you to be brave. Love will push you out of your fear eventually. It will cause you to seek ways to grow and advance yourself so that you may be strong, to be the covering and to be the stability that your society needs, that your family needs, or that your partner needs. And these passive toxic men, these quietly toxic men, they do not understand this. They do not understand it because love does not live within them. So therefore, if this person is doing kind things to you, it is not love. It is not love. It's a performance. And that performance will crumble under pressure. When real life pressure comes, it crumbles. Then these are the kind of men who would turn around and start gaslighting you when their love starts to crumble, their confidence, this persona that they've built starts to crumble, and you are trying to get them to be accountable. They hate accountability, just like the arrogant one, the other far end of the spectrum, which is the loudly toxic men. They hate accountability just as much. That is what makes them toxic. So these are the men who would literally sit there and watch a house burn to the ground, and they would do nothing, because more than they are trying to cover and protect the people that depend on them, protect their society, their bloodline and all of that, more than that, they seek to protect themselves first and foremost. They seek to protect themselves. They're very high on the self-preservation instinct, so they come first. They can appear nice, but that nice is just them being nice out of convenience. They're not truly kind because it takes strength, it takes sacrifice, it takes love to be kind. So these are the quote-unquote nice guys. Be careful about those nice guys. Be careful about those nice guys. A lot of those nice guys are dangerously toxic guys. They're dangerously insecure, dangerously toxic. So energy is what reveals the truth. And I know that this is something that a lot of people would not understand. People who are in denial will not understand, but healed people who are, they've worked on themselves, they're healed, they have the ability to see things a bit more objectively than a regular person who is still deep in trauma and, not yet healed. So that is the thing about the toxic masculinity. So it has two sides, and as a woman you need to always know the two sides. They're both on the opposites of the spectrum, but they're both extreme, right? They're both extremely lacking in that divine essence and that love. They're both incapable of holding love. They're both incapable of embodying love. That is why they cannot give pure divine agape love. And this is what makes toxic masculine men, very scary to a lot of women, because you just know, like, this person, they're the kind of people who easily look for escape. That is why, they easily look for escape, because they avoid that accountability. They avoid that accountability because they have no love in them. It's people who hold love that constantly leave their hearts open, seeking for ways to be better for the sake of others, before themselves, for the sake of others, for the sake of the society, could be for the sake of their country, could be for the sake of their family, could be for the sake of the woman they love, right? So it's only love that makes a heart open to grow, to learn, to be accountable. And toxic masculine men who do not hold love, they are not looking for accountability. And because they're not looking for that, because they're not open to that, they always seek escapism. So when things get hard, when they're hit with a certain complication, with a certain challenge that makes them uncomfortable, instead of facing it head on, they would rather, just settle into an escapism. And when we talk about escapism, it comes in different forms. For some, it is drug abuse, excessive drug abuse. For some, it is excessive gaming. For some, it is gambling. For some, it is addiction, porn addiction, food addiction, all forms of addiction, just to escape the uncomfortable reality that this challenge or this opposition to their spirit poses in their lives. So they tend to escape. So that is why a lot of the drug addicts and alcohol addicts and all of that, alcoholics, they fall under this category of toxic masculinity, right? Because it takes toxic masculinity. It is toxic masculinity that tends to deal with these extreme addiction problems, right? It is toxic masculinity that tends to bring about these extreme addiction problems. Now, someone might be thinking, well, it happens to like divine masculine men sometimes. If you're saying that, right, that is actually something that is very possible. It is very possible in the sense that, people are not, people are constantly changing. People are constantly moving. And it is very possible that a man who was once toxic masculine, later evolved to become divine masculine, right? And, in the course of their evolution, they managed to walk on that particular addiction. But now they are in the divine masculine spectrum energetically. But there are cases where certain scenarios may occur, maybe in seasons where their faith is less. Those seasons have the ability to bring them back to certain addiction or certain negative habits that they conquered when they were in their toxic masculine. So it is in cases like that that you could see that trait coming up again. And the wise thing to do for a man who is divine masculine, who is also dealing with addiction, which is mostly a problem, an illness that happens to men in the toxic masculine spectrum. Whenever a divine masculine man is dealing with that, all he needs to do is to just get right with God, like get right with your belief. Take time to heal. It is, trust me, in that period, it is not as bad. It is not as bad as someone who is toxic masculine, who is dealing with addiction. Like this person literally swims in that toxic free. That is why addiction becomes him and he becomes addiction. But in the case of the divine masculine, he is struggling in that season with addiction. There's a difference. There's a difference. So if this divine masculine man quickly, comes to accountability and does the work that needs to be done, he may soon find himself free from that captivity once again. So he has a better chance than the man who is purely in the toxic divine masculine spectrum. So let's talk about the second category of masculine men. The second category of masculine men is the masculine men, simply masculine men. Okay, when we're talking about masculine men, I laugh a lot when I see people who tend to classify, the divine masculine under the masculine category, right? And I'm going to explain to you guys why I believe that there is masculine men and there is divine masculine men. The two are not the same. The two are not the same, and I'm telling you this from experience, not just mine, but from a lot of studies as well, from other people's real lived experience. So yes, there is a difference between masculine men and divine masculine men, and today I'm going to explain to you guys the real reason. And this particular aspect, I really need the good girls. I need my good girls to focus and to really pay close attention to this part of the video, because this is the part where a lot of good women who have truly worked on themselves get it wrong. And that includes myself, because very recently I had to relearn this lesson all over again. So as I'm telling you this, I am also telling myself, and I need you all to really, really understand this, because this is critical. This is very serious. This is the aspect where a lot of us who have put in the work on ourselves to heal, to be better people, who are currently on our journey to being, divine feminine, to being virtually the best versions of ourselves. This is where a lot of us, tend to get it wrong, because we cannot differentiate between masculine men and divine masculine men, right? So masculine men are what I would call the men in the middle. They're what I normally call men in the middle. They are the men sitting on the fence. They are neither divine masculine or toxic masculine. And I know that sounds confusing, but yes, there are literally people who energetically live in the middle. And that might sound kinda safe to some people, but from experience, girl, it is not safe at all. That is why you need to understand the nuances that comes with men in this energetic state of being. Right, let's get into it. Masculine men. Why I call them the men who are neither toxic nor divine masculine is because of the state of their energy, right? The state of their energy. So these are the men who at first sight, they can so very easily seem like divine masculine men. And this is why a lot of women fall to their charm, right? Robert Greene always talks about, well, this idea did not even originate from Robert Greene. I think it originated from one of the founding fathers in psychology, Carl Jung, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but I don't want to misquote him. Okay, so people tend to put on masks. Like people have, a mask that they put on for the world. We all have like a public persona, right? It's only 1% of us who actually show up exactly as we are, right? In every scenario, like one of ones, okay, one of ones. But most of us, we show up in the world with masks, and it is not necessarily because we're evil, but I've come to learn that the reason why it is so is because that is part of our defense mechanism. It is one of our human intelligence, instinctive defense mechanism. We need those masks to be able to survive in the social, in the society, right? Because, well, I don't want to get into all of that explanation, but people who know this, they know this, right? So we need mask. We need a persona to be able to survive. So basically, we tend to put on a persona that is non-threatening, which could also translate to a persona that shows the best side of us. There are people who spend years perfecting these masks, okay? Like, there are people who spend years constructing the best of the mask. So it's so much so that all you see when you look at them are the best qualities of themselves, right? And it's not that they're necessarily hiding the bad sides of them. It's just, people get so used to their mask, they get so addicted to their mask over time that, even they start to believe that that mask is the truth of who they really are. But whether that is the case here or not, the fact is everybody wears a mask. And the mask everybody puts on, it never shows the ugly side of them. It always shows the best sides of them. And that is what makes the masculine men particularly very dangerous men. But dangerous in an objective way. So the dangerous depends on a couple of factors, which we're going to get into as I continue to explain this point, right? So what makes this man particularly dangerous and of particular concern that I believe that especially good women should look out for is that these men, like I said, they're men in the middle. They're the men sitting in the middle. They're neither divine masculine nor are they toxic masculine. But here's the thing about sitting in the middle, right? You're at a very moldable energetic state. So let me explain it this way. If a masculine man, for instance, partners up, right, with a toxic feminine woman, in a couple of time, after a couple of time or after a period of time, that man can very easily at the end of that relationship become a toxic masculine man. That's the thing about being in the middle. And if that masculine man gets with a divine feminine woman, he can, now can does not mean will. Please be mindful, be like, as you're listening to this audio, listen alongside my words. I'm choosing my words very carefully. If he gets with a divine feminine woman, he can easily and eventually become divine masculine. Now, the reason for that is the men who stay in the middle, they are energetically one of the most liquid, not liquid per se, because they're not as flexible as the divine masculine. The divine masculine are the most energetically flexible men, right? Which is why they're very much capable of love, like real divine agape love, compared to the masculine. Compared to the masculine man. We can only compare them to the masculine man in some instances, but never to the toxic men. So the masculine man is somewhat moldable, not liquid, but moldable in the sense that it takes an intensity. It takes an intensity of partnership to change them. So if a woman that is purely toxic feminine gets with a masculine man, he can very easily, depending on whose persona, which a lot of the time is the woman who is purely toxic, she has a stronger energetic frequency than a man in the middle. So that woman is going to corrupt him, and at the end of the relationship, he is going to be toxic masculine. Especially in the heat, when that opposition starts to come, when that challenge starts to, come up, when that friction starts to come up, depending on the intensity of these opposition upon his energy, upon his spirit, right? It has the ability to overwhelm him and shift him completely from the masculine spectrum to the toxic masculine spectrum. Now, in the case of him getting with a divine feminine woman, he can only become divine masculine if her divine femininity is very strong. like very solid. So that is to say that it takes intensity to reshape this man into the other side. It takes intensity to reshape the energy of this man to the other side. So what does that mean for a good lady, for a smart lady? Now, that does not mean that masculine men should be disposed of. You know, the way we can easily spot a toxic masculine man, and you can easily just decide, this is not a man that I see myself with in the future. This is not a man that I see my kids referring to as father in the future. It's very easy for smart women, intelligent women, women who have done the work on themselves, intentional and conscious women, to overlook the toxic masculine men, rightfully so. But in the case of the masculine man, it's often a bit challenging. And this is me saying that as a conscious woman, as an intelligent woman, you want to be careful. If you are, or you find yourself in a situation where you're already partnered up with a simply masculine man, he's not divine masculine, he's not toxic masculine, you need to be very careful. It means you have a lot of work to do on yourself and on him. This is what it means. It means you have a lot of work to do. And if you slack, you can very easily, not you per se, but your slackness and your lack of wisdom in this partnership can very easily derail the relationship towards a toxic downturn and into the toxic masculine spectrum, in a way that it becomes a relationship that does not nourish either one of you if you slack. Now, a wiser conscious woman would look at it. Oh, okay, so am I divine feminine? If I am just purely feminine, I'm neither divine feminine nor toxic feminine, I know that I have a lot of work to do in this relationship with this masculine man. There's going to be a lot of work, a lot of fight, but it's not going to be as bad as, partnering up with a toxic masculine, but there is going to be a lot of trials. There is not going to be ease and flow. That is what it means, because something will eventually give. So a wiser woman would assess, am I truly divine feminine? So if I'm divine feminine, how strong is my frequency? It means, as a divine feminine woman, if I want to get with a simply masculine man, I have to be very strong in my faith. Otherwise, I would find myself at some point in this union backsliding. And that could also very easily mean that he would mostly backslide. It's not because I am meant to lead, it's because masculine men, simply masculine men, they are, how will I explain it? They're not the best leaders. They've not fully come into their leading potential. That is why they would require a lot of priming, subliminal priming. That is why a woman needs to have certain wisdom and understanding to be able to partner up with men like this. If not, of course, in the beginning of the relationship, it will be rosy and sweet until it gets to the middle, where you lose yourself. You lose sight of where you were going. You lose sight of your journey. Right. So it takes intensity to shape in stone, because like I said in one of my old videos where I was describing, the essence of masculinity and femininity. I likened the description of masculinity to the character and the nature of stone. Masculine energy is heavy. It is strong. It is very strong. That is why it's very, very hard to influence masculine energy, especially one that is grounded as the divine masculine. Those are the heaviest of them, but at the same time they're also the most flexible. But you see, the toxic and especially the masculine energy, they are still as strong as stone, but they're not as flexible as divine masculine men. So it takes a lot of intensity. The same way it takes an intense heat energy to be able to carve stone into an object of beauty and whatever. It takes intense energy, intense frequency intense frequency that is concentrated on that purely masculine energy to be able to shape it into the form you need it to be. That's just what it means. That is what it means. So it will take a lot of work. If you want to get your purely masculine man to be divine masculine, to be a kind of man who loves God, who has love for God, who loves you with grace, who is gracious to you. Masculine men don't have grace. They have the potential to pick it up, but it takes them attaining that divine masculine spectrum, that divine masculine frequency, for them to really value grace and value love and value divine leadership. That's the difference, ladies. So if he's just simply masculine, he's only going to be stuck on bare minimum. So if he's leading, he's only just going to lead bare minimally. It's going to take an intensity of communication, intensity of example and all of that to be able to move him towards a divine masculine perspective, where he goes from just seeing leadership as just leadership to seeing it as a divine authority and a divine assignment and command from his creator. He's never going to value it. He's just going to do the bare minimum. He's just going to love you bare minimally. He's never going to see it as a value. He's going to love you when it's easy. He's not going to love you when it's uneasy, when it's most challenging. So he's the kind of man that could love you like heaven when it's easy. But when the challenge comes, when the pressure comes, he caves in. Because he is not as flexible. He is not as flexible as the divine masculine man. He is solid, but he is not as flexible. So ask yourself, is that what you want to gamble on? So it takes mindfulness, a lot of mindfulness. A lot. I wish you ladies know how much of mindfulness it will take to be with a simply masculine man. It takes a lot because he's going to be very solid. And this can also show up in partnerships where we have a high achieving woman, a woman that loves to grow, a woman who wants to grow. She desires to grow in career, in beauty, in experience. But this man, because he is so solid, like a proper masculine man, but not as flexible, he becomes so stuck on his ways. And when she wants to expand, the purpose of a masculine man or masculine energy in, relationship with a feminine is to contain the feminine, to contain the feminine energy. So in a case of a woman who wants to expand, she's now like an ocean that wants to expand, but the river bank, the bank of the ocean that holds the ocean in place, refuse to expand along with the feminine. It can become very hard. The woman starts to crash, and then chaos comes along as a result of that. So there's someone experiencing that in their relationship right now. As a woman, you realize that you want more, you want to grow, you want the relationship to grow, but he just seems to be he just seems to be quite content with how things already are, and he has no desire to grow with you. So every ideas and every attempt you bring to expand and advance the relationship, he just keeps opposing you. That is what a masculine man would do. Because, like I said, they are very solid. He's a solid man, but he's not flexible. He's not as flexible as the divine masculine man. That spirit, that energy, does not make them flexible. So it means that a lot of your desire to grow and expand is going to be met with resistance. And that resistance will cause you resentment. It will cause resentment. Resentment would lower the attraction in the relationship. And this is where, for a lot of people who cannot deal, stress comes in. A lot of unexpressed hurt starts to stay in the body, and you start to develop inflammation in the body. Sickness, illness, diseases start to come because you have partnered yourself with someone who is solid, a true solid partner, but incapable of tango, incapable of flexing his waist because he is not flexible. So he cannot move when you are leading, and he cannot really lead to the fullest potential that is required in certain situations, in certain circumstances. His leadership is very limited because that is the capacity that his spirit can carry. That is the capacity that his energy can carry.
I know this is some deep knowledge, and it sounds like I'm speaking a different language. But this is not a message for every, like, you need to understand the language of energetics to be able to understand what I'm talking about. And I'm trying as best as I can to use the modern common languages to also explain the points, but it's really something very critical that women need to understand. Women really, really, really need to understand it. So yes, that is the thing about the masculine man. So they're not entirely, he's not entirely bad. It's not a bad idea, but you need to ask yourself as a woman. Now, if I see that a masculine man has taken interest in me, and I'm single, right, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to assess where I am as a woman, first of all. So it's not safe if I'm just simply feminine. That means that the level of our relationship is already set in stone. We're not going to grow as much from the level where we're at. We're just going to be regular couples with regular lives. And the divine spectrum is the spectrum that everyone should aspire to get to, because that is the spectrum where you are living your fullness as a human being. And even at that, the spectrum is so high that even most divine masculine and divine feminine people don't even get to the fullest. You can never get to the fullest. But the point is to be on the path of that. That is the spectrum where you experience heaven on earth within your spirit and within your soul. And that is the dream. That is the ideal. That is what we all want. So as a woman in this moment, I'm looking at this masculine man who has taken interest in me. So if I know that I am just simply feminine, I know that this is not a wise partnership. So if I see that I'm divine feminine, I now need to ask, how strong am I? How powerful, or how strong is my divine feminine frequency? Because it has to be strong, guys. Don't forget what I said. I said it takes a lot of intensity. It takes intensity, strength. Your energy needs to be stronger, much stronger than his, to be able to cause him to step up, to step up to the divine masculine spectrum. But here is the beauty of that. Once he steps into that divine masculine spectrum, you do not need to lead anymore. You do not lead. You do not need to put in much work. You can now take the back seat, because once he gets to that divine masculine spectrum, a new understanding and a new perspective comes to him. That is what spiritual upgrade does to a human being, to a human consciousness. It brings a different perspective, in this case an upgraded perspective. So all he needs to do is to ensure that he's planted in a good community with other divine masculine men, and your work is done. Your work is done. It's just for him to start growing and learning and growing and learning. And you see that as your relationship gets older, the older your relationship is, the better it gets. Because he is growing and he is the leader. He's a very critical aspect of the relationship. If the bank is growing, if the bank is expanding, the river can expand. They can travel across nations, across continents. They can form new islands, new countries, new continents. It's a beautiful synergy. It's such a beautiful thing to see a bank expand, and the river, the depth of the river is coming towards the surface, and she's filling up the whole earth. It's such a beautiful kind of relationship. So yeah, that's the thing with divine with masculine men. So now we're going to go into the divine masculine man. I spent quite a lot of time explaining the masculine man, didn't I? So yeah, as a woman, basically, you need to ask yourself those questions. So if you are toxic feminine, don't even bother. You guys are going to create really, really terrible decisions that will cost a lot. It will cost an entire era. It will start generational curses, generational negative patterns, and all of that. Don't even get with a masculine man. If you're toxic feminine, don't. And if you're simply feminine, it is not wise. But if you're divine feminine, you need to be strong, girl. You need to be very, very, very strong to be able to handle the masculine man, because he is very heavy. He is very heavy to carry because he cannot spiritually and energetically carry himself. So you have to be very strong. Your influence have to be very intense to be able to mold him into the divine masculine, to be able to cause him to upgrade to divine masculinity. But the beauty of it is, once he upgrades to that divine masculinity and he is planted in a community of other divine masculine men, your job is done. You become a princess. And that leads us to the divine masculine man. So what does it mean to be a divine masculine man? What do they really feel like on a spiritual level, like on a mind level? What does it really feel like? You know, I thank God for my life. I really, really thank God for my life, right? I come from an environment of simply masculine men and toxic masculine men. That was the environment I kind of grew from, right? Like when I first came into this earth, right, in my early years, I was more surrounded by just simply masculine men and toxic masculine men. And that is how I got to learn, right? Like I really got to, you know, at that point of my life, I thought that was it. Like that was all there is to masculinity until I, you know, as I grew up and I went through different things and I grew from those things and I upgraded spiritually, right, in knowledge and understanding and wisdom and all of that. And as I also changed environments, God is so, oh my God, like I have to be honest with you ladies, one of the things that I am most grateful for in my life is having met and seen firsthand and experienced firsthand what divine masculinity looks like, how they walk, how they talk, how they think. It is a blessing, especially when you come from an environment where that was scarce. I'm telling you guys, it was a blessing. Till this day, I still thank God for having met these men. Now, there are not very many of them that I've met, but as I talk to you in this moment, two comes to mind. I dated one and I was mentored by the other. And I would tell you guys, nothing in the world, and I mean it, nothing in the world compares to divine masculinity. It is honestly like a physical embodiment of God, like having God in your corner. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. So let's see. Let me define what a divine masculine man is. So the divine masculine man is a man that is solid, because masculinity is as solid as a rock, right? In comparison, like when comparing it to physical elements, to give a better understanding to people who are not as, you know, maybe like into spirit knowledge, right? So divine masculinity is very comparable to the hardness of a rock, just the way a feminine energy is likened to the softness of water, the character of water. And we know that water isn't always soft. There are times that water is also hard, and there are times that water is gaseous. It becomes gas, right? So, but masculinity is hard, it's solid, it's heavy, it's strong, it is stable in its very essence. Divine masculinity, right, is the masculine energy that has found a balance and a good harmony with its feminine counterpart. Like I said in those early videos where I first introduced this topic, every human being has both masculine and feminine energy in them, right? So this is a concept that just helps to better understand these complex knowledge. Every human being has masculine and feminine energy within them. So what makes a divine masculine man or divine masculine energy divine masculine is simply, like, at an energetic definition, is simply because that masculine energy has learned the art of really containing its own feminine side. It has learned the art of tangoing, the art of tango. You know how it says it takes two to tango, and tango creates a beautiful harmony. So it's just a harmonization of masculine energy, which is the predominant energy in this case, and the feminine energy. So unlike the toxic masculine men, what makes them toxic masculine in an energetic level is that they have completely rejected the feminine. They have rejected empathy. They have rejected love. They have rejected intuition. They have rejected wisdom. All of those qualities that are fueled by feminine energy, they have rejected it because they have energetically rejected their feminine essence. So in the case of a divine masculine man, he has embraced his feminine essence. And that is what makes him not just a strong and a stable rock, but also flexible when the need calls for it. He's also flexible, and that is very beautiful to note. That is very important for you guys to note, because the most divine masculine men that I have met, they are a solid, reliable, stable men. And they're also the most empathetic men I have met. And this is how I've been able to gain such a great understanding of the energetic difference between these kind of men. And I know that there are different kind of men energetically. So if you're trying to discern the nature of a person, you need to understand the energetics. You need to understand the energetics. And as someone who has experienced all the spectrums of the kinds of masculine energy that exist, I can tell you for a fact that what makes this divine masculine men stand out from the masculine and the toxic masculine men is that they have such good relationship with the feminine. And that is why if you check these men, they are able to form a healthy relationship with the women in their lives. They are not the kind of men who, cut the wings of the women under their care. They're the kind of men who even expand the wings of the women under their care, because like I said, they have the divine essence. And God is the ultimate divine essence. He has a beautiful mix of feminine and masculine energy. That is why God understands men and understands women. We were created in His likeness. So we possess both elements. We possess both elements. But what makes each of us distinct as a gender is because there is a primary element riding us, but it is God's it is God's desire to see us unite to these elements, work together with these elements, not be so extreme on one element and reject the other element, because God Himself is both elements put together. And I always say to myself that the Old Testament in the Bible, it really showed the masculine side of God, and that was because the situation called for it, while the New Testament showed the more feminine side of God, because the situation, the what's it called, the condition, the present condition at that time, it called for it. So we see how God was able to beautifully flow, because when you read the Bible, it's hard to comprehend that the same God who killed a man for breaking the Sabbath law in the Old Testament is capable of, healing a man that is possessed with demons, is capable of bringing to life dead souls, dead sinful souls, is capable of, so great a love that He heals, people with, what's that disease called again? Is it leprosy? Is it leprosy? A leper. Oh yeah, that's leprosy for sure. That is leprosy. So, it's hard to comprehend, right? But, it's not hard when you understand energetics. It's not hard to comprehend, because it is the same qualities I have seen in this divine masculine man that I have experienced. They are very, very solid men when the situation calls for that solid nature. It's not hard for them to shift into that. And when the situation comes for a more gentle and gentle approach, a softer approach, they're very good at shifting into that place, because they have such mastery and healed relationship with their feminine side as well as their masculine side. So this is what makes them divine masculine. And women who are with divine masculine men, they know this, like this needs not much explanation. And okay, another quality that makes this divine masculine men divine masculine. They're not divine masculine all on their own. These are men. A lot of the times, what you would find in the lives of these men is that they are also godly men. They are godly men, because here's the truth I've come to find. It takes God and only God, the presence of God and only God, to be truly divine masculine. It takes the presence of God and only God to be truly, truly divine masculine. It is not something that can be read in a book. You know, the way people out here on YouTube are teaching how to be divine masculine. Yeah, I mean, you can learn the traits, you can learn the understanding and the insights and all of that, but you can never embody it without God. Because what does it mean to truly embody that divine masculinity? It is to be able to still remain divine masculine even when the situation is hard, when your surrounding is dark or is hot, but when the opposing environment is, intense, it doesn't move you. Because when it is intense, you soften up. A divine masculine man is able to soften up, whereas a toxic masculine man and a simply masculine man, they cave. They get destroyed under the intensity because they don't have the quality of softness. So they are unable to withstand an intense situation. So if it's a negative, intense situation that comes upon them, they are unable to withstand it. But a divine masculine man can withstand it because he has pruned his ability to be soft. So it is in those intense periods that he is soft, because it only takes softness. It takes water to be able to withstand such great heat. And water is feminine. Water is feminine. When that heat becomes so intense, water becomes gas. It becomes gas. It doesn't disappear, it doesn't get destroyed, but stone will break. Stone will fracture. It becomes a fragment, scattered in different directions. It becomes scattered in different directions. But water can withstand great heat. And if you're a guy listening to this, take this little statement here as a reason not to underestimate the power of a conscious woman. Women can take a lot. Not that they're meant to, but it takes, the feminine is such a great, it's so powerful. It really is. It does have its dark side as well, and that is where the masculine comes in to cover for the feminine. But this is one aspect where the feminine covers for the masculine. So when the situation becomes negatively intense, you don't need to man up. You need to soften up energetically. And why is that? Someone's probably thinking, oh, are you saying men should be soft? Are you saying men should be women when situations get intense? Isn't that the period that I should be masculine? Yes. Being masculine is employing the logic in that moment, the wisdom, the divine wisdom, to know that in this intense situation, this is not the time for me to settle into my ego and what I know as a man. This is the time for me to soften up. Why? I'm softening up for a purpose. I'm not just softening up to soften up. I'm softening up so that God can take over. So that God can take over. It is God who comes in and makes that man extremely powerful in that soft state. I'm trying not to make this sound too complicated. This is all just energetic talk. This is energetic talk, right? It takes surrenderness to work actively with God. Surrenderness is soft. It's soft. It's to assume the role of a moldable spirit. It takes softness to do that. It's to say to God, I know that I am a rock, I am a man, I am all of that. But in this situation, I am water. Be my riverbank. Lead me, guide me to where I should go. In that period, a man is required to be soft, and it takes only divine masculine men who have already healed their relationship with the feminine to be able to fall into that soft state without protest. Whereas a masculine man and a toxic masculine man, they will resist it with every strength, with every ounce of strength that they can muster. they'll resist it. They'll say, how can you tell me to soften up? How can you tell me to surrender to God? This situation is going bad. My family is dying. This is happening, blah, 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 blah. I need to be a man. I need to do this. It's all ego, 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 ego. And ego is heavy. Yes, a man needs his ego, his sense of self, his self-concept to be able to survive as a masculine being, purely masculine, right? But wisdom that comes from the divine is knowing that there is a time to drop that ego, put it aside, and soften up. Now, a divine masculine man would be more open to soften up. He can do that without much protest, without seeing it as him being weak. Divine masculine understand that state is not him being weak. It's actually him surrendering so that the higher power, which is God, can come and walk through him. He becomes a conduit. And that is one of the most powerful forms that he can ever be as a man. Divine masculine men, they understand this wisdom. Simply masculine men and toxic masculine men, they reject it. They call it weakness. They call it simping. They call it feminization. That's the difference. That is the difference. Like women watching this right now or listening to this audio, they've experienced this. You've experienced that period where your seemingly great relationship with this man, it takes a very serious hit because of a very serious problem that you both were going through in that season of your relationship. And at some point of going through that very terrible negative experience, you say to your man that he needs to go to God. And he understands that would require him to assume the role of, I cannot do this on my own. I need to go into the posture of surrenderness to a higher power. But in that period, instead of your man to be grateful that you've given him, you've reminded him of this divine wisdom, he fights you. He fights you. He resists you. He ignores your advice. He ignores your signs, your guide. He ignores it because his masculine spirit or his toxic masculine spirit completely rejects that concept. It completely rejects that reality. So this is a situation where, as a woman, you are highly blessed when you find yourself in partnership with a divine masculine man. All you need to do is remind him. He would understand. And he would go into that surrendered state because he knows that is the state where he becomes more powerful enough to bring insight and strength into the situation, to guide his family to the ascension, to guide them out of the chaos, to bring them all alive and all their souls are well. But a masculine man, a toxic masculine man, he will resist this, like you are his enemy. It's not because he hates you. It's not something that he is actively doing. It is something that is happening in the subconscious. It's because of his energy. It's because of his energy. That's it. That's just what it is. It's his energy. It's his spirit that is rejecting that idea, that prompting, that guidance. No matter how good a place it's coming from your heart, he is going to reject it. It is not necessarily him, the human soul him. It is the spirit him that is rejecting your suggestion. It is the spirit him that is fighting you, because that is not a reality that he is used to. So you see, it's easy to be with a toxic man when situation is easy, when the environment is not fighting against you, when stars are aligning for you. It's very easy to love all these different categories of men when it's easy. But we all know life can be hard. There are seasons when life is hard. It comes to test you. And those are the seasons that you want to choose a partner for. So if you're choosing a partner, you want to choose for the hard seasons, because those are the seasons that often break, fracture, cracks a relationship that seemed so perfect on the outside. So when you're choosing a partner And why it's important to understand these three categories of masculine, or three categories of men spiritually, on a spiritual and energetic level, is because of the hard times. The times that actually truly matter most in the length or in the lifespan of a relationship. Those are the hard times. Those are the most critical times. So you want to choose a partner for those times. And it is because you want to choose a partner the correct way that you must understand the different categories of men that exist in the world. And you can deeply understand those categories of men when you understand the spirit that powers their consciousness, their thoughts, their actions, their meditations, their words, and eventually their actions. And that is why we are talking about energetics. It's just spirituality. It's nothing deep. It's not new age. This is ancient knowledge. This is ancient knowledge. This is the language of discernment. This is the language of discernment. Not very many people understand this. That is why a lot of people label it new age. It's not new age. This is more ancient than what is taught in a lot of religious houses today. And that is not to say that all religious houses are lying to you. No. But this is simply to say that you want to be careful. You want to really understand the people that are labeling these things new age. And I understand. There are a lot of people who speak the same languages, but who speak lies. But I am not one of them. But as a human being, you have the autonomy to choose to believe that or not. I pray that you will have the discernment to know if I am speaking from a place of lies and deception, or I am speaking from a place of true divine download. Because to me, this is all that it is. Divine download from God. And so that's it, ladies. Those are the three categories of men that you need to understand. You know, this is a period where there is an awakening, a mass, feminine awakening, and we see women are upgrading. And as women are upgrading and healing generational wounds and soul wounds, there is a great demand for divine masculine energy, which is the energy that is capable of leading this awakened and conscious women, leading them and creating healthy relationships with these women. So I am on a mission to set more souls awakened. And if you're a man listening to this, I need you to know that it is not impossible for you to be divine masculine. And I need you to know that you really need to be divine masculine to be able to lead a woman properly. And that means on the outside that you really need to be choosing God. You really need to be choosing God in this season, because there are a lot of worthy women out there. And maybe in another video, I am going to specifically do a video addressing the men specifically, because I have certain knowledge and understanding, like spiritual knowledge and understanding on how to really lead women in a relationship. I don't see enough people talking about this, and I just want to bring the spiritual and energetic downloads of leading women in a relationship and how to call out the queen in a woman, how to trigger that side of her that would want to follow you even to the ends of the earth, right? And this is something that also is good for you, because this is your purpose, to lead. So it helps the world if more men are actually able to lead, but not in the egotistic human societal construct way, right? But to be able to lead divinely, right? It takes certain understanding, certain knowledge, certain insights that I believe I have, and I look forward to sharing that with you guys. So if this is something that you would be interested in watching, just leave a comment in the comment section. That's the only way I would know that you guys would be interested in watching this video. So leave a comment. This video is going to be about how to awaken the divine masculinity in you as a man, as a modern man, right? And how to lead a woman, because the divine masculinity as an essence, like, this video is not even enough space for me to talk about, the effect that, my encounter with this divine masculine man really brought in my life. Maybe in another video I am going to get to talk about it, but this is not the video. So for now, I'm just going to do the video on. So for now, I'm just going to do the video on how to awaken the divine masculinity in you as a man. So if you're interested in that, give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment if you would love to watch that video, and thank you guys for stopping by and listening to this episode, and I will see you guys in my next video. Shalom.